connected. So I would like to request, really is a very eminent professor as well as industry trained engineer, experienced engineer working on instrumentation and control. So really, it's a great opportunity and fortunate to have Professor and Professor Venkateswaran here. And I request Professor Venkateswaran to deliver his lecture. Thank you. Over to Dr. Venkateswaran, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to share some of my insights into the sensors and controllers that are related to the robots, and Dr. Murugan particularly for the nice introduction. And I hope I will be able to live up to the expectations of the organizers for delivering this particular lecture. I am going to share the screen, and I will be talking on the topic. In case at any moment of time I am not audible, or if the presentation goes offline, kindly let me know. We will set it right and then we will continue. So if there are no interruptions, I presume that everybody is able to hear me and see me properly. So now I am going to share the screen and then go ahead with the presentation. So today's lecture is going to be on sensors and robotic controllers. A seemingly simple topic, but a very difficult challenge in terms of practical implementation. So we will try to understand the background of how do we go about these sensors and their functions in a robot, and what do we mean by a control action with respect to the robot, and what are the different types of control action that we can anticipate for a robot, and what are the future trends that are related to the robots in general. So this is going to be my overview for the lecture today, and I would like to start with a few disclaimers. I have taken many images, data and material from the internet, and I have acknowledged them also, and all credits are due to the original sources. The interpretation that I have considered from the given
Sir, audio is not too clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Venkateswaran, sir. Venkateswaran, sir.
இன்று முழு நாடும் கொரோனா வைரஸ் அல்லது
I request participants, please be patient. I think there is some problem. You'll be joining quickly.
Sir, have you called him, sir?
Yes, I called him and
Okay.
he told he'll be checking it.
Okay, sir. Okay, fine, sir.
Kindly rejoin, sir, please. Rejoin, sir, please. That's it. Okay. Now, you have come out of it, sir. You have to rejoin. Okay, please, sir. We are waiting, sir. Please.
Hello.
Yes, sir. It's perfect now, sir.
It is okay now? You are
Yes, sir.
able
Yes, sir.
to.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay,
Yes,
sir.
sir, your audio is available now.
Present, sir.
Okay, it says that mic is automatically turned off due to the size of the call. I do not know
Okay.
how to do it.
Okay, sir. Okay. No problem,
So I
sir.
will present screen again and then I will continue. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now I hope I am audible and visible. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fine. Sir, can
Yeah,
you make
great.
it as a can you make it as a full screen, sir?
Yeah, I am making it full screen.
Yes.
It's okay now?
Now, perfect, sir. Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we will start with the definition of what a robot is, because this will give us an understanding of the background of what we are trying to understand as sensors and what we are trying to understand as controllers. So a robot is differentiated as a reprogrammable device, and it can be used for doing a variety of tasks. Now, when we say reprogrammable, and when I am aiming at a different set of tasks to be performed by the device, I need a set of inputs that are required for this reprogramming or that are required for reorienting the device to perform a set of tasks. So that is where the critical nature of what type of sensors I need to consider and what I am going to do with the inputs that are received from the sensors. So these two things are to be considered with respect to the nature of the definition that we are associating with the device itself. Where I am looking at a medium volume of production and I am also looking at reducing cost. There could be an argument that if the volumes are more and if the costs are to be reduced, then we would like to go for a robotic automation. Please understand, the volumes when they multiply typically do not demand any kind of reprogrammability, wherein the task becomes only repetitive in nature. There is nothing challenging with respect to, for example, changing the design or adding some kind of a feature for the purpose of production. So typically, we are looking at something like a medium type of volume, wherein we are trying to associate with the cost. We have to be sensitive to this because whenever we demand a function from the sensor or a controller, it should not add to the cost per unit that we are talking about. Effectively, we should end up in a particular spot wherein it makes business sense to execute the task. So this is the introduction that I would like to consider for robots. Now we will take this robot into a welding option. Whenever we talk of welding, this is an image which I can give you as the definition of welding. So we have certain set of equipments, we have the job or workpiece, and when the job gets connected to the workpiece through then I expect that the robot that I am going to use will substitute the functions of the human being that we are going to see over here. So this is what the figure will look like in case of a robotic welding. So what is the challenge here? The challenge is to replicate the functions of the human being exactly to the process. So which means I need to be aware of what is happening in the mind of the welder, what are the things that he is going to sense, and then accordingly act upon those information. The same thing is to be replicated for the robot also. Now, practically speaking, it is not possible to replicate a human being, no matter how good you are with respect to science and technology. It is practically not possible to duplicate the functions of the human being at least. So we can come somewhere near to the functions by targeting what he is doing and then trying to do it to the best of the ability of the available resources with respect to whatever that we get in terms of uh, the inputs and in terms of the control action that is feasible with respect to the mechanical devices. So here I have two parts. One is the sensors, that is, I am going to take upon the inputs from the operating environment. The robot is going to take it, and then the controlling action, the robot is execute some kind of a response to the information that is being made available in the operating environment. So the goal is to be as good as this welder in getting a quality weld done. So this is what we are trying to define or see as an understanding for what a robotic welding is. With this background, now we would like to seek what are going to be the challenges that this welding option presents to us. A typical problem with respect to any process is it should be possible for us to understand what is happening straight away. We call it in a very crude way, I would like to call it as linear. Okay. Linear means I can get to have an understanding, or it is possible for me to extrapolate what is available as information into the future, so that it is possible for me to predict what is happening and accordingly take an action. We all know that welding is a highly non-linear process. Which means this is, as a process itself, welding is non-linear. And if I want to implement the process with respect to an automated environment, I add to the complexity of this non-linearity for handling. So a simple example of what you call diagram is given here. This is an image of a crop field. Now imagine I'm going to do an automatic harvesting, okay, using a tractor or some kind of a cutting device associated with a tractor. If my goal is to cut across the crop boundaries, it doesn't picture a linear movement here. Please understand, the white lines that you see over there present a varying, profile with which I have to operate. Same thing is being done with respect to what we call it as a weld. Weld seam is not going to be straight. So how you are going to accommodate in your sensing and control to aim for a proper seam. So this is the essence of considering a robotic welding sensing or control. So this is very, very important for us, because what we typically consider as a perfect weld seam is available only on paper. Whereas in practice, we will not be anywhere near to this particular weld seam. Even that can be what you can say managed to a larger extent. Okay, if we have proper algorithms with which we can understand how the weld seam is going to take shape. But if I need to add more complexity, just look into this. The weld seam is not linear or as perfect or as we would like it to be. In addition, I am also introducing another complexity in terms of the axis. Okay, so the job is going to be done on a pipe, for example. The weld seam will have a profile which cannot be traced linearly. So in addition to how non-linear it is, I also need to understand in what profile it is going to be taken care of. So this is one task that I need to consider. I can increase the complexity. For example, I can rotate the job also. Okay. So perfect weld seam, even if it is going to be perfect, so-called perfection, if I am going to rotate the job, then I am going to be in further difficulty in considering with respect to direction and application, what should be my sensing and then control action. So the challenge is, in a way, it is a unary challenge, a simple challenge to perceive what is going to be the weld seam and then continue to operate with respect to the defined weld seam and accommodate the differences that are coming in practice. So this is going to be the primary challenge that we face in the robotic vending environment, for which I am supposed to have sufficient sensors and I am supposed to have good enough control action. So with this background, now I will get into an introduction of what do we mean by sensors in a robotic environment and what are going to be the different types that are to be discussed. So before getting into the robotic environment, there is a slight differentiation that I would like you to consider. There are two steps in any kind of operational environment. So I can look for mechanizing the operating environment, or I can look for adding a robot into the operating environment. Both are not going to be the same, but the sensors that we are going to deploy can be considered as similar or having similar requirements. The objective of whether it is mechanized or it is going to be robot can be differentiated later with respect to the control action. Basic difference between a mechanized arc and the robotic arc is with respect to the definition of what a robot is. It is reprogrammable. It is not a hard automated environment. Okay, so it is not a fixed task. Suppose, for example, tomorrow you would like to shift from one job to another job. There should not be any changes made to the setup in terms of hardware. You can just change your program and it should be possible for you to execute the task. So this is what we mean by a robotic environment, and it should be differentiated with respect to a simple mechanized arrangement to execute a welding action. So when you talk of sensors to start with, if we are in a simple mechanized arc welding environment, broadly speaking, the sensors can be classified into two different possibilities. One we call it as a geometry oriented, the other one we call it as a process oriented. We are much more focused with respect to the geometry oriented sensors today. We call them in terms of contact and non-contact type differentiation. Contact type, if you literally ask, okay, so why I need contact? Non-contact type is better means functionally non-contact type sensors offer us the cushion of operating convenience, but practically they lack with respect to the accuracy and some clarity. Both hardware and software. So contact type sensors are very efficient, functional up to the requirement, and are available in plenty and are to be considered as a first choice when you are going for implementation if that contact type is permitted with respect to your job. When we say contact type, further we can go for either a mechanical or an electrical option, and in non-contact types we have optical, inductive, capacitive, thermal options. What are these optical, thermal, etc.? The options are with respect to the principle of transduction. So here I will take a moment and then deviate to consider what do we mean by the working of a sensor. The sensor working is very simple. It converts one physical phenomena into another physical phenomena. Now, for example, I can convert one form of energy into another form of energy. A sensor is going to do the same thing. It acts as a medium of conversion. So if I am looking into the possibility of displacement, for example, this displacement will be reflected as a change in capacitance, a change in inductance. Okay. So this change in the physical phenomena can be quantified as a measure of what is actually the change in the operating environment, and that can be taken as information related to that particular measured variable. So now this means of change, energy change, can happen through many mediums. That is what is being indicated here as optical, thermal, etc. So you can choose depending upon the convenience and the what we can say fit for use means for the particular operating environment to go with any one of this. The applicability of any one of these sensor types or functions depend upon what is the operating environment we are choosing for ourselves. Please be do not under an impression that contact type is always good, non-contact type is always bad or something like that. No, don't get into a generalized definition of how good or bad a sensor is, but rather define them with respect to your operational requirements. This is very, very important. These are some of the examples of the type of sensors that we can operate. With respect to the process-oriented, what you call definitions, they are actually classifications of the operating parameters. Either I can talk them as primary parameters or secondary parameters. The primary process parameters are related to how do we go about the process. They are in touch. Okay, it is like, you know, you are in that game. Whereas the secondary process environment is one step away. It could be an implied information or inferred information from what we measure or analyze from the available information. Now, please understand this process-oriented, what you call sensing mechanism, again will demand something of the kind that we have discussed in the first part of contact or non-contact. So, to get to know what is going to be, for example, the angle of the torch that is being used, I need to have some kind of a transduction mechanism which will give me that information. So, broadly, this is what a sensing mechanism for a mechanized arc welding environment will involve itself with. So this we have to consider for a robotic environment. So I have given you a picture of a typical picture of how a robotic welding environment will look like. I guess this has been sufficiently explained to you in the previous topics. It consists of basically a welding equipment, as we have seen in the first slide of the welder. The basic welding idea is, let me have a welding equipment, let me have a job, and the connection is through the either the robot or through the welder. So here it is through the robot. Now we need to ensure that whatever the information that is being available at the workpiece should be communicated to the controller. The welding equipment is not the controller. Okay, a controller is a separate part which will be the master in this operating environment. It will dictate what needs to be done to the welding equipment, to the robot, to the torch, etc., so that the welding operation is executed as per the requirements. So this is the functional view of how do we look into the welding robot. So for this robot, what are the different type of sensors that we may be in need of? Okay, so that we can classify, but we need to have certain things to be understood before that classification. Sensors, like robots, come in a variety of shapes, size, and costs. Okay, even functions we can add. So there is nothing like a generalization. Because a sensor works for a particular operating environment or for a robot, we cannot say that that sensor will be or can be used for each and every option. We have to be very, very careful. We have to be aware of it. Next part is still more interesting. Sensor alone is not good enough. Let us say I get you the best sensor possible. Today, the best available laser seam tracker possible to you. Just put in that laser seam tracker into your operating environment. It doesn't mean anything unless otherwise. Okay, it is going to be backed up with a good enough programming software and also a reasonable feedback mechanism with respect to the controller. So this has to be ensured, always it has to be ensured that the software that is going to be integrated with respect to the operating environment is robust enough to process the information that is available from the sensor and then respond back to the environment. So this has to be ensured. So this is what we are trying to highlight as the positive aspect of how do we go about a robot. Okay, now we'll come to the specifics. With respect to the types of sensors that we can go for arc welding robot applications, I can get them into 4 different categories. The first one is going to be the touch sensor. The second one is going to be called as a through arc sensor. Third part is laser. The fourth part is vision. So this is based on the requirement. So we are just seeing that more or less, whenever I am going to hold a torch, the information that I am going to ask for from the workpiece is where should I weld. So this where should I weld in simple terms can either be known with respect to a contact that is made with the workpiece or in a kind of a non-contact type. And when I'm going to weld, I'm going to weld continuously. So can I have this information continuously across the cross section of the workpiece? Or in a non-contact type, how do we upgrade the information that is to be sourced? We will see it in detail, each of these individual types shortly. Functionally speaking, we can also categorize the sensor mechanisms as three parts. The first one is finding the seam. Seam is the profile of the weld that we are going to consider. The second part is tracking. Finding the seam is only identification of a particular location. Tracking refers to the continuous reference with respect to which we are going to weld. Or part scanning. So imagine you are, okay, this is an extension of the concept. You are not going to weld. I am going to replace the torch with a scanner, for example. Then the same idea can be executed for quality inspection of a weld, for example, or I can use it for part inspection, or multiple choices are still available. Since after welding, you will also would like to have a mechanized, inspection mechanism, so that to qualify the weld, I have included this as a function at this stage. So now we will try to get into the different types of sensors that could be related to the robotic arc welding. So in the previous case, we have seen that they can be classified as contact, non-contact, etc. Presently, we are going into specifics. So to know what sensor I need to know in the first place what is the information that I am looking for. So for example, I would like to know the arc voltage. Then I need a voltage sensor. So this voltage sensor could be sourced from any of the transduction principles that we have considered before. It could be capacitive in nature, it could be inductive in nature, it could be non-contact type, it could be contact type, etc. So those are all the possible types which can be used here for the purpose of the measurement. So similarly, I can go for welding current. So for example, if you are going to consider a welding current sensing requirement for a robot, the best two options are either I go for a Hall effect or I go for a shunt. Hall effect is a very rugged type of sensor that is available across different ranges. I can even go up to 1000 amps and 1200 amps and provides a very reliable measurement of the variable. Shunt, on a relative scale, I would like to say, if you are going to give me an option to choose, I will always go for a shunt. I will always go for a Hall effect sensor. But with respect to the placement, if I am not able to place it properly or the placement is not comfortable enough, then I would like to go for a shunt option. Shunt is also very rugged, but I prefer the reliability of Hall effect over shunt with respect to the current measure. Similarly, we can extend our requirements for arc length. Arc length doesn't give you much options. It has to be a voltage sensor. We typically measure it across the plus and minus terminals of the given welding equipment. With respect to the distance, we have many options. Okay, the typically used option is a capacity sensing mechanism. I can use, for example, proximity sensor also. The preferred choice is, we can say it in that way, a capacity means. I can get to have the requirement of sensing the edge or getting to know where I need to start the weld or stop the weld. In that case, I can again go for a proximity sensor or a tactile. There's a very subtle difference between the distance and the edge. Distance is the remaining path. Okay, edge is going to be the beginning or the end. So it is kind of a spot measurement. That is what we are looking for when we try to define this edge. Similarly, we are going to talk of tracking. So tracking is again a continuous mode of measurement. So we can use different options, scanning, vision sensors, etc. Again, I prefer to have, today we have one of the advantages of the technology is today we have excellent, vision systems. In fact, if I would like to give an analogy, you consider your closed circuit televisions. Okay, the images that we take using those cameras, those vision systems, and the processing algorithms that we have today, it is possible for us to deduce the person's face, for example, or even to the extent that suppose I keep that CCTV on a very busy street, it is possible even for me to consider what is going to be the number in a particular vehicle. The algorithms are available to that extent. So the futures of the weld scheme can best be correlated by using such image processing algorithms with a vision sensor. If your application is at a lower scale of the cost competency, then we can use a simple tactile and other type of sensors. Otherwise, I would like to go for a vision sensor when it comes for the weld seam tracking, because it gives me the best possible results. Similarly, we go for, if you are interested or looking at weld penetration monitoring, then we can use some kind of a non-contact type, and principle of transduction could be an IR or ultrasonic. So weld pool monitoring is also possible. Again, I go for a vision sensor or thermal imaging. We need to remember that in all these applications, whenever we talk of weld seam or anything that is related to weld, and we are talking of the temperatures which are something like at 3000 degrees centigrade. So we need to take, at least I would like to say, so we need to be very careful with respect to our choice of mechanism, choice of vision system. They are suitably protected, or it is possible for that particular sensing mechanism to work under that particular operating conditions. So these are the typical sensing requirements for which we are going to choose our sensors from the table that we have already given as types. So now we will go for the one of the, we made 4 choices if you remember. Okay, so we are going with the first one. The first one is a very simple understanding of what a wires touch sensor will do. It is in simple what we call terms, we can call it as a touch sense. So it is nothing but I am going to have a physical contact with my workpiece, which will let me know whether to start with respect to that particular location. I can have the axis known before me. I can deduce the location of my present touch with respect to my defined axis location. So this touch will enable some kind of conductivity. Okay, for example, it could be electrical in nature. So if that is going to be the case, it means that it will be measured in terms of some change in resistance, that how much of the current is flowing in the circuit, and therefore where is that particular location. That can be easily correlated. So the conductive surface is going to be identified as a part where I'm going to start my weld or continue my weld, or where I'm going to locate my what you call going to use, this is a principle that I explained, is going to use a very low voltage circuit, and it will detect, or it will help to detect the points in the weld joint. So there is no hardware. The advantage of this particular approach is I am not going to have any additional hardware associated with my system. Whatever that is in existence of my defined variables, I am going to continue with the usage. I am going to use them in such a way it is possible for me to understand where I am standing. The touch sense can be completed with built-in features of whatever that we are going to have as a welding equipment. The control action alone will be dictated by the controller. It will be demand. Now, the only problem is with respect to the speed. So now this process of locating or going to a particular location, getting the touch done, and then reverting back with respect to the information received will take some amount of time, and this time has to be added to my process time. So that has to be taken care of. So we deem it on a relative scale, the process is going to be slower than other technologies. Basic sensing mechanism that we can look for, the touch sensing mechanism. So here we are going to talk, or we were rather talking about a particular location. Of tracking series, I can continuously do it. So here what I'm trying to do is I try to make a very simple kind of an understanding that I will make a start and stop, and between the start and stop, it is like a linearization technique. Okay, you have your starting point and ending point. You presume that they are related in a linear way, and you draw a line. You don't draw an exponential line. Or if you presume that it is going to be an exponential line, you define it that way. You draw an exponential line. So similarly, you are going to initiate a tracking way wherein I measure point A and point B, and I try to define the path in between with a preconceived notion of whether it could be linear or it could be exponential. So that is what we extend the touch sensing for a tracking mechanism also, if it is appropriate. This is very, very important. Now, what could be the difficulty with respect to this is, the primary thing is, when you are saying tracking, we should not get limited because of the reduction in the speed, because we have to have a continuous job that is being executed. So depending upon whether the part is to be sensed with respect to a 2D or a 3D operating environment, my delay will be much more higher. The number of failure points, or the chances, the probability that I may go wrong, okay, is also relatively higher when compared to the other technologies. We can't do much of improvement, because where I'm going to land and how I'm going to sense is with respect to the workpiece. For example, if I operate in a clean room environment, the product goes through a proper cleaning cycle and the operating environment is free from dust and other things, then this will work very fine. Okay, will not have any trouble. But if you are in a typical heavy fabrication industry with a kind of carbon steel, rusted plates and things like that, we will get into some kind of serious trouble with respect to our identification, because the touch will not be able to differentiate between whether it is the workpiece or whether it is going to be the dirt that is on the workpiece. So that is for the engineer or the supervisor or the welder to make sure that there is no impurity, so as to say, on the surface of the workpiece to convey a wrong information. So this is only intended to find an arc start and arc end typically. So that is going to be the application, and it doesn't help with part variance. Part variance in the sense, let us say there is going to be high-low, okay, unfortunately in the fit-up. Then with this, it will not be possible for us to appreciate that. So touch sensing only says point 1 and point 2. So if they are misplaced, or there is going to be some kind of a misalignment, for example, in the joint, it will not be able to appreciate it. So you will go along as if it is a perfect fit, which means that your weld penetration or weld joint may become improper. So the useful information, again, here it comes like the implication is, if I have very controlled operating environment, okay, highly controlled operating environment for my welding job, this will work very fine. If there are going to be much more uncertainty associated with the operating environment, it is very important for us to be careful about what we are choosing over here. Touch sensing is also limited by weld joint type. Okay, so how we are going about it, because I need a differentiation, because high and low, okay, energy flows only when there is a difference. Okay, so I need to have a high and low reference to appreciate that the job has a height of 3 mm, 2 mm, etc. If I am going to have a butt joint, for example, I am at a loss, because I will never know, where is my reference point. So it is very important that the applicability of this particular sensing mechanism is to be considered. The torch, okay, is also needs to have some kind of extension, because as I said, typically it is an electrical way of understanding. Okay, so when it is an electrical way of understanding, when you make a contact, the information is provided as the resistance in the conducting path. If unfortunately for us, some kind of a dirt, or over a period of time there is a small difference in the diameter of the wire because of the heat or kind of thing, there will be a change in the resistance which can significantly change the value that you are going to sense, which will become misinformation. So this is another interesting thing. We have to be very careful. Either it has to be part of this torch mechanism, or it can also be externally done, like you do in a GTAW process. You sharpen the tungsten this thing rod, okay, tungsten tip, okay, with a regular periodic interval. Similar thing is also to be considered here. It also requires clean edges. That is something which we have already discussed. So the most important thing, the gain or the advantage of this method is, instead of having a single point location, now it is possible for me to track. That is, I can continuously sense. The disadvantage is it will be better served in environments where we have good control over operating environment. Okay. Now let me go a step further. Now we will talk of seam tracking. So instead of having only point A and point B and presuming a linear or nonlinear relationship between this point A and B, now I am upgrading my requirement as, is it possible to understand whether to get the instantaneous value of what the seam is at a particular instant of time. So this is what we are trying to consider as a through arc seam tracker. It is nothing but it is going to use a solid state sensor along with a welding power supply to actually measure the arc characteristics and to determine the variations in the robot path and the actual seam path. So now we have a kind of a program which expects that along the travel path of this weld seam, I will be having, so say for example, this is related with respect to the arc characteristics. So for example, if my weld joint is having a uniform, a depth of 3 mm, let us say. I am just making it very, common. And my arc is going to continue to travel this 3 mm depth throughout the weld length. Then I am not supposed to get any kind of disturbances with respect to my arc characteristics. Okay, so this is a reference point. Suppose there's a disturbance in the arc characteristics, then it indicates that something is not okay. Okay, so how we are going to compensate? So to know, or we are trying to extract some information based on the information that is available when arc is actually being made on the job. Previously, this was presumed. We had a kind of an assumption that this will be linear, this will be exponential, kind of. Here it is actual, based on that particular disturbance at a particular time interval at a particular location. It will be possible for me to respond to what could be the actual state of the condition. So this is all called as a through arc seam tracking, that is TAST. This is difficult with respect to a thin material. Okay, again the problem is the reference is not with respect to vision, reference is with respect to the location. So the limitation is it is going to add time. It may be difficult for us to perceive a difference when the thickness is less, and it is also limited to a certain set of material, because if it lot depends upon the conductivity of the material. If the conductivity of the material is good, if it is very faithful, it is very sensitive towards the variations in the electrical voltage, then I get to have a good reading. People who are not conductive or who are outside the border of good conductors, then we will have trouble, because the signals that we receive will not be reliable. So this is very, very important. I again repeat, when you go for the choices of sensors, please understand the operating environment. Consider all variables that are in your operating environment, including the material that you are going to weld, because that makes a big difference with respect to what information you receive and how you are going to process the information. The conditions of the material. Okay, here again, it makes a huge difference. As I said, misinformation is much more dangerous than no information. If there is no information, we can suspect that something is not working. But if the information is misrepresented, then we have no idea. We will be giving a control signal which has nothing to do with the actual operating environment. So the conditions of the material has to be considered to be proper Otherwise, we should not opt for this. Okay, and dry runs, we cannot simulate and see. Probably this can be compensated to some extent in a simulation environment. Whereas practically, only if you weld, you will come to know the arc characteristics. Therefore, any kind of dry run or that could be used for tracking. Okay, so these are all going to be part of what we call it as the robotic working environment itself. There is nothing to be added. Probably the solid state sensor is an addition, but otherwise nothing to be added for the robot to perform its duty. Now we are coming to a possibility of an upgrade, again a technological upgrade, which will give us more precise information about what we are looking at. So that is called as a laser sensing. So the basic use of laser sensor, what we are looking at is, the first advantage that we get out is it is a non-contact type. A typically non-contact type means you can be at a distance. When you are in a contact type of environment, or if you are at a very close distance to the welding environment, as I said, we need to protect ourselves from lot many things, including temperature, dust, etc., etc. Okay, so non-contact type provides me with relative ease of operation of getting the same information in a different way. In fact, it's much more an easier option. Once you eliminate the contact, you can avoid the time delay that we are talking about in terms of seconds. Okay. Instead of a physical contact, what it is going to use is a laser, what you call beam or a dot, we can call it as. It captures the location and orientation of the part and then gives it back as the information. It is very easy to teach, and then I can come back to the robotic controller for its job. Similar to touch, unfortunately, it also requires, again, the principle of reference is there, so it will not be possible for us to have it on even surface. Okay, so we need to be very careful with respect to if we are looking at square butt joints. It can potentially run into issues if they are highly reflective surfaces. It works on the principle of reflection. So, for example, if it is highly polished stainless steel or such surfaces, we have to be very careful and we have to calibrate it suitably to get the information back to us. The system, the biggest what we can call it as difficulty is you have to suitably mount the sensor, because that orientation, again, it has to be calibrated. It's not just a plug and play device. Okay, so the mounting has to be done in such a way that the laser beam, and it should be at an angle which gives you a proper orientation and reference for the information that we are seeking from the job. We can eliminate this possibility also. Let us upgrade further and see how it can be done. Okay, so that possibility is with respect to the 2D camera. So here, as you can see, what I am trying to do is I am trying to get an image of what I am looking at, and then I am going to process the image. Now, the success of this approach is purely dependent upon the algorithm that you are going to write to extract the information that you are going to see on the page. So this means, imagine, for example, you might have seen all the, weather prediction photos, okay, in news and other channels. So that image is being taken from a satellite which is thousands of kilometers away, but is being able to be processed in such a way that it is possible for us to understand the location, even to the extent of a district in a state, and then to give information that this particular area will have this kind of a rainfall or this kind of a windfall or whatever it is. So if it can be done with that many thousands of kilometers away, it is possible for us to do it for the weld seam, which is in centimeters away from what we are having as a camera. So that is the concept here. The concept can be further down into a possibility of 2D and 3D. Whenever you are going to use a 2D system, this allows the user to capture the location with the camera sensor which is mounted on the arm of a robot. The problem with respect to the approach is I need to have an additional mounting, the space, the flexibility, and the camera should be robust enough not to get affected the sensing mechanism, the lens should be suitably protected from the operating environment of the welding. So that is to be concerned. Probably you may have to have a kind of use gases, preferably non what we call it as inert gases, okay, to flush the camera, lens, to keep the camera lens away from the actual part of action with the distance. So this is again, in principle, we can revert to our touch sensing mechanism of having references with respect to points, but the higher end algorithm will serve the purpose of extracting the useful information for our purpose. It can grab a wider image. That is, I can identify, note, and feed the area of information that I am interested in. It can also be used, to extend the area of my observation, and probably I can avoid much of an error because I get to know a much larger scene than what I do otherwise. The difficulty is it is much more sensitive to the lighting and surface conditions, and it does not provide the depth of field because we are operating with a 2D camera. So if things are going to be stacked, or if you are going to be interested in multi-seam welding, it is much more harder to come into the conclusion of what signal is required. So this comes to the conclusion of the best option that is possible for us. We can use a 3D camera. This is the best thing that we can have as a sensing mechanism for robotic welding. Okay, so it is nothing but a 3D camera which literally captures what is available at source. How we are going to process it is in your hands. So we build a complex mechanism of laser sensors and high-speed controllers to understand the scene and part locations in real time. This real-time option is what is typically associated as a differentiation between 2D and 3D camera, although the sensing mechanism, the features of the camera may be similar. So here we strive to provide data and get the torch to weld in real time with respect to the available data. Compensation program is how we are going to adjust to the current welding seam location, and it can even allow up to hundreds of inches, and simultaneous welding is possible, and whatever that is expected as part of the automation initiative, the advantages of automation can be realized using a 3D camera. This solution enables the use of material handling. I can extend, it is not now related to the welding task. Since I get to understand the operating space more specifically, I know the difference between, for example, the weld seam and the next part, and it could be a spare or whatever it is. So there could be multiple things that I can do with the same robot arm, since I am able to appreciate the difference between the objects that are present in the operating environment. So this is the general schematic of the laser scheme tracking mechanism. So I have a reference. So ideally we would like to mount the camera, and the torch is there, you can see here, and the torch is mounted with the camera, and the alignment is to be referred properly between the torch and the camera, so that the torch can be operated with respect to the inference of the alignment of the axis that we are talking about for the robot over here. So the laser is also fitted along with the camera. It will try to identify the scene. The camera will note the actual position now, and the torch will act upon the information, so that to adjust itself to any requirements to enable the previously decided weld seam option. So here the implementation is shown as part with respect to how it is getting done. As you can see, it has basically two more parts. One is the equipment, other one is the controller. The controller, robot controller, will act to the robot to execute the tasks that are already pre-programmed. This computer could be embedded into the controller itself, or it could be a separate mission, and we can even have it as a hands-on and kinds of etc. Remote control mechanism, etc. It is possible. So this is a general schematic of a seam tracking mechanism. So I can give you a summary. This is again with respect to how do we go about it. Whatever that we have discussed so far, we have a kind of a summary with respect to the advantages and the limitations of each of the case. So with respect to a simple sensing mechanism, we have considered the touch sensing option. We have discussed sufficiently. And with respect to the view sensing, suppose if I want to, consider to have some kind of information that is available as an image or possible as an image, I can do it using different types of transduction principle. They have been listed here. For example, I can do it in terms of contact. Inductive type is can either be contact or non-contact. Capacitive is a non-contact type of transduction mechanism. Acoustical options are something like using the using the mechanism of ultrasonic principle, for example, is nothing but is an option that we need to consider for this thing, sensing. And optical sensing is photodiodes, photosensors, etc. Basically, they go for different types of these sensing mechanisms. A combination of factors. Probably the best illustration or demonstration of how we go about non-contact type is photoelectric sensors, which is optical sensing. And the best use of acoustical principle for sensing the depth, etc., is ultrasonic. If choice is given, probably I will choose ultrasonic over capacitive because it's much more, again, in terms of measuring per lens, much more reliable with respect to what I measure. Each of these methods have a particular difficulty. We need to verify whether it will suit my requirement. So they are available in the public domain. Before going for any particular choice, we also need to evaluate whether it will serve the purpose of my operating environment sufficiently. So beyond this, we can also go for, for example, I would like to consider at a higher range a weld pool observation to determine or to evaluate the power source or to consider the spatter or whatever it is. So that is also possible. Or we can simply talk about sensing the arc, whether the arc is is in a straight line or there is some kind of an arc flow or disturbances, whether we need to act upon it with respect to adjusting the voltage and current parameters for the arc that can be done. So my only request is don't make any generic observations. Please be aware that any of your choices that you consider will be with respect to a particular operating environment. The same thing that I have rephrased with respect to the types that we have considered, as I have described the touch sensor. This is the simple through wire sensor is at the lower rung of the ladder in terms of complexity, and it is the easiest to apply. It doesn't require any additional complication of hardware software. The 3D camera or the vision system or laser seat tracking is just a variation of 3D camera. I just use a laser source, that's all. So this is at the most highest level. So with respect to the complexity, cost, and the applicability, we need to choose between them. The features have been described here. As I said, please understand why cost is important is it has to be related to the volume. So if the per piece cost is going to be, going to be high, we need to look for a mechanized solution. We need to look for something like what we call it as a hard automation, not a robotic solution. There's no point in, it's not fun to have a high cost solution for the sake of it. Okay. So please evaluate your option or what we call it as return of investment with respect to your choice. And if that return of investment is taking too long period or too risky to be considered for, because technology keeps on changing. We do not know after 2 years or 3 years whether we will be considering the same setup for production. So in such cases, we have to have a quick return on investment. So that is the implication of the graph that I showed you before. So when we are talking of the cost per unit, the robotic welding option fits into an area wherein we are having a medium volume and a medium cost of per unit application. So your choice of sensors, when you go for this type of an implementation, should match with that description. If not, it will become an esoteric idea, and very likely the project may be, declined because of practicability, which is to be taken very seriously. So when you make a table, when you make a requirement set of tables, see, you start from the lowest possible thing. See whether you can use only the through wire sensor, for example, and through some kind of a programming ingenuity, it is possible for me to convert the information that is available through this simple sensor to an useful control action. So this is how you are supposed to look into the operating environment for your requirement, not just plug a 3D sensor or a laser scene tracking and put it and say that my job will be done. Please understand, I repeat again, laser scene tracking, the best that you can have for a welding application, will not work if your programming is very poor, if your software integration is very poor, if your operating system do not have what I would like to say, the speed of response that is required for this laser scene tracking to apply. For example, I can give you a very simple example. I am operating PowerPoint on this mobile. If my processor, if mobile is having a processor of a capability which is 10 years before, then I cannot operate this PowerPoint on the mobile, or I cannot talk to you in 4G internet connection, or I have the best mobile in the town, but my connection is 2G. I will not be able to communicate to you. It cannot take that load. So it's a combination of different factors that are available in the operating environment. It is all teamwork. So when you go for the selection of the sensor, start with a minimum thing, because once you become, say for example, the biggest advantage of a through wire sensor is it is agnostic. It can go with any setup that you would like to rig up. So it associates itself very comfortably, and that is a type of thinking that you have to associate when you go for the choice. So the summary has to be looked into that aspect. Simply don't look into the drawbacks and say that this is unfit. Okay, see whether you can compensate the drawbacks with another part of the team member, and then still you use that particular component. So how do I choose? We have already discussed many of the things. I will just run through some of them. It is basically the function of how good a sensor is, and how good a sensor is represented with respect to its characteristics like range, accuracy, repeatability, reproducibility, linearity, etc. About which I don't think we need to discuss. It's all basic definitions only. They cater to the requirement of how good the sensor with respect to my requirement, accuracy, linearity, etc. I hope you are able to appreciate. And something has been defined over here. Sensitivity is very important. Why I am talking about sensitivity, why I have defined here is, it is very important when you are going to respond. If I am going to sense the change late, it is very simple. You are driving a vehicle, for example, and you need to apply brake. The sensing mechanism which provokes you to apply the brake should be quick enough. If you see an obstacle and you are triggered quite late for the control action, then it is still of no use, no matter how good your control action is. So that is why sensitivity matters. Sensitivity again is with respect to cross sensitivity. Please understand, your operating environment is very difficult, or in the sense it's not linear. It has a high temperature component which could destroy your sensitivity quite easily. So 10-degree rise, 100-degree rise in an operating environment, what it will do for your sensitivity? Okay, it has to be taken care of. Error, random error, all those things. Reproducibility is again under similar conditions, whether I am good enough to come back with same results. So these are some of the aspects of choosing a sensor. So with this background, now I presume that we have sufficient information on robotic sensors. We will come to the controllers part. I would like to stop here for a few moments. If you have any questions to be asked, you can ask now, or if I can proceed further, I will proceed and then I will take it later. Shall I proceed further, or any questions are there with respect to what we have seen so far?
Sir, there is a question in the chat box.
I am not seeing it. Can you please read it for me, if you do not mind?
Sir, with regards to camera utilization for scene tracking, what will be a typical image or video acquisition rate used for tracking the weld scene in real time during welding? Sir, I will repeat the question, sir.
Yeah, please.
With regards to camera utilization for scene tracking, what will be typical image or video acquisition rate used for tracking the weld scene in real time during welding?
Okay, looks like there are multiple parts. One I understand is with respect to the resolution of the camera that you are talking about, or number two is with respect to the processing rate. Okay,
Yes,
so it's more of a pixel image. See, again, there are two parts. The way I would like to see it is the pixel that we are typically associating with a camera is not very distant from what we are having as our, even a mobile camera. Okay, it could be in the range of tens or maximum hundreds of pixels. The question is what you are going to do with that image. Okay, nowadays the shift is more with respect to the image processing, not with respect to the image what you call accuracy. So what is available as for example, okay, let me put it this way. I have a CCTV camera, okay, and I can still make it fix it into my operating environment. I can process the image with my algorithm and get better results or similar results to what a so-called high-end camera can do. So there is no there is no minimum requirement as such, I would like to see. But if you get into a video mode, instead of 2D image, you would like to have a video streaming done, then we are in some kind of what we are trying to do is we are simply scaling up. When you have a processor which is capable of processing much more information, or it is possible for us to process information at a higher speed, we also increase the complexity of the input. So instead of having a 2D image, I process a video image. In this context, then I would like to go for a video camera, which I don't prescribe for a process. If you are in an R&D and I would like to understand how the droplets get into the weld pool, that's a different issue. But for weld seam tracking, I think a 2D image camera with a good processing algorithm will do. What you see as 480 to 640 or 640 cross 720 as typical images will be sufficient for the resolution that we need to consider to get useful information out of that weld seam. So this is a requirement. Anything more is okay. I am happy with it, but not mandatory. That's my answer. I hope I have answered your question.
Sir, please, you can continue, sir, because you have to.
Okay.
You can take it later,
Yeah.
sir, please.
No issues.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And now we will go for the most important part. I may know everything. I may be the most knowledgeable person in the world, but if I don't talk, then it is of no use to anybody, including me. Okay. So sensing is one part. I get some information from the weld. What you are going to do with that information, that is the most critical part. So if you don't act on that information, then it is of no practical use to anybody. So controllers need good sensors, no doubt about it. But sensors alone will not be sufficient for the purpose. So when you say control, again, we need to understand what the welding robot has to do. So a welding robot, in a very simple kind of definition, must fulfill accurate continuous path operation. That's all. Okay. So all the difficulties I have put it in a very simple way. It should be accurately following a defined path. The defined path will have some kind of shape changing mechanism in real time due to the the deposition of the weld metal. For this to happen, it is not sufficient to have sensing and I cannot act in isolation. So the challenge, unfortunately, is my robot could get connected to any of the welding equipment that is possible. It is something like this. You may get connected to most simplest of an inverter-based power source, or you may get connected to the most high-end, which gives you the heat input per what you call drop discharge of the weld wire. So in such cases, how we are going to act? So it should also be capable of selecting, setting, and tuning the modes according to the requirement and according to what I have as an input. Okay, the resources are to be manipulated in real time. That's what I mean by on the fly kind of a thing, so that the welding robot can act properly. And most importantly, as we all know, I do not want to have some 5 different types of connections. I would like to have something like an emergency switch, single point operation, okay, in the welding robot configuration. So this is the background of what I expect from my welding robot to do to achieve the requirement. In this context, I am going to define what a controller for a robot will be. The control system, the system is nothing but what is behind that so-called controller of an industrial robot determines its flexibility and efficiency within the limits set beforehand by the design of the mechanical structure. So this is very interesting. The design of the mechanical structure, that is the operating environment, is already fit to the robot. So when the information comes, it understands the context of the information. What I am being asked to do, respond immediately, go to location, okay, means what is known because I know what I am operating with. So now the purpose is to provide a logical sequence for a robot to follow. Unfortunately for you, during welding, there comes a spatter along the path. It was generated during welding. Okay, I am in real time. Now I have to consider that deviation with respect to the spatter. So that means I have to make a change in that sequence that is being dictated for my operation. So when I say control system will provide a logical sequence, it includes the deviation with which I can operate, take over, and then I can continue. So the system will provide a theoretical position value for each step I am supposed to follow and continuously update on the actual position. So the robot should be able to be receptive in the real time to get that information and execute that information. And as the robot operates, the control system evaluates this difference and together with all other associated data produces the actuation that is required for driving the robot to its destination. So destination is nothing but the follow-up of the weld seam over here. So here, this can happen in 2 ways. As we have seen in the sensors, the control system can also be either simple or complex. A simple control system is what we mean by an open loop system. Here I have indicated a typical control schematic of an open loop and a closed loop structures. This is common to any system. In the context of robot, we have to substitute the inputs that are related to the robot and outputs that are related to the robot. When we say open loop system, I will feed the input. I presume that there will not be any disturbance and the robot can continue with respect to the predefined path. Whereas the closed loop system, it will update the inputs that are taken in real time and then accordingly the output may be suitably marked. So now I have to be aware. Now when you say I am going to control, I need to be aware what are the inputs to my system and what are the outputs of my system. Then only I can map the correlation. So we would like to again revisit a typical schematic of a robotic welding environment to understand what are going to be the inputs that are fed to the robot and what the robot can do and which is going to be identified as the output. So this is what I'm going to consider as broadly the inputs and the outputs for the robot for which it can relate that what is happening between the input and the output is a control action. So the inputs can be again segregated for a robot as internal or external. The internal is nothing but those signals which form the feedback to monitor and control the joints of the robot. We will see what the joints are. It is nothing but the different actions of the robot. And external are nothing but which are going to come from the operating environment, which will be used for controlling the operations with respect to all other associated devices or signals of the operating environment. Now, how I am going to take action finally is the end effect. So any control signal, what I'm going to do, turn, rotate, go straight, okay, stop, start, whatever that I'm going to tell to the robot, it is going to be implemented practically using what we call it as an end effector. An end effector is nothing but something which is attached to the robot's arm or wrist, and it allows the robot to accomplish that particular task. So practically, we have two different possibilities. Either I am going to use it as a gripper, if it is going to be handling a part, or a tool. A welding torch is nothing but a tool. Okay. So based on this, I can evolve 4 different types of control actions. One is what we call it as a point-to-point control action. These control actions are realized as software algorithms. I can program, I can give the values, I can decide how it is going to be taken care of. So a point-to-point control robot is nothing but moving from one point to another point in a pre-designated way. Okay. So this is typically useful in applications where I would like to insert it. I would like to use spot welding, hole drilling, loading, unloading, assembly operations. The nearest welding operation possible with this is spot welding. Spot welding, all locations are predetermined. I just need to execute them. Okay. So it is just moving from point to point. Typically, this is called as a P2P robot. Or I can look into a continuous path control robot. What do you mean by continuous path? Performing movements along the controlled path. I have a weld seam, for example. I'm going to do a fillet weld. I have to move along the fillet weld seam. Okay. So then it is a controlled path. Okay. The path is to be controlled with respect to the actual means. The examples are, the best example is always arc welding. Simple examples, extended examples are painting, finishing, pasting, etc. Differing upon what type of tools you are going to use. An extension or a variance of this continuous path is also a controlled path robot. It is like, imagine instead of, I will give you an example. Suppose I am going to use a drone. You are familiar with drones today. Okay, it is one of the fascinating aspects of today's technology. It is a very interesting question for you to think about. Can I call a drone as a robot? This is a very, very interesting question. Can I call a drone as a robot? Please think about it. I do not want to answer now. So what a drone does is, it has a predefined path. It has a continuous path. But for a movement for A to B, I may have to take deviations from both. Okay, what we call it as a servo type of movement. That is, my goal is to start from A and reach B. That's all. In between, if I have to take a detour, it is allowed. Please take a detour. If there is an obstacle, please take a detour and then go. So we are using drones, for example, today to deliver e-commerce products. So very likely they are going to be servo controlled. So this servo controlled is what we mean by a controlled path, wherein we are going for A to B. Any path is acceptable. Please understand, for welding application, the servo control is not what we are looking at. It is not that weld from A to B, you take any path. That is not allowed. It has to be a continuous predefined path. Any obstacles are to be suitably compensated. Okay, so that is very, very important. This is a control option for the sake of understanding that it exists, that I am talking about. The last one is, stop to stop. It is an open loop system. Okay, so not much of use with respect to the applications that we are discussing. So broadly speaking, there are 4 different control system operations possible for a robot. We call it as point to point, continuous path control, continuous path servo control, and stop to stop mechanism. In most of the cases, we may end up only with P2P and CP. Yeah. So when you go for the different type of controls, okay, and it depends upon what type of actuation mechanism or end effector I am going to use. I can move, for example, faster, okay, or I can simply move from one end to another. I can move from one point to another point. I can apply more force, okay, I can exert more force, etc. So accordingly, the control action can be classified into different types of motion, servo, dynamic, etc. They are all different forms of control, but end effective means maybe the same. So need not break into much of the confusion with respect to this. It is a nomenclature that is used for a particular type of control action that is getting executed. Joint is very important because that will also help us to define what we mean by the control action or type. In a robot, we can have 5 different joints. A linear joint, for example, is nothing but a relative movement between the input link and the output link. Now, this input link and an output link will be defined in the robot, and the link is defined as a linear motion, a translational sliding linear motion, and the axis of these two are going to be in parallel. Similarly, I can, with respect to my options of how do I move about, how do I make a movement, okay, it can either be linear, or it could be orthogonal, or it could be rotational, or it could be twisting, or it could be revolving. They all go with, the definitions go with the simple dictionary defined terminologies of what do you mean by linear, orthogonal, rotational, twisting, and revolving. So this is what is getting represented here for the robot. So why I say this is, your end effect has to be defined in a revolving motion, then I need to take an appropriate control action to rotate the end effector, to rotate my tool, to move my tool in a translational way. So this has to be understood. The control signal will be the same. Please understand this. Suppose I am going to talk in terms of current. The control signal may be 10 milliamperes. What this 10 milliamperes is going to do, whether it has to rotate, whether it has to move up or down, whether it has to twist, is to be determined by your program, control program. So you have to write the program in such a way to convert the control signal into an appropriate joint movement for the robot to take that effective action. So this is the end result of the control action for a robot. This can also happen in a cascaded way. Please understand, in a robotic environment, there is nothing like need not be an one-to-one control mechanism. If that is going to be the case, I will have 100 types of requirements, 100 controllers. No, I can club them together. I can have a hierarchical control action made possible for the robot. So joints will be the field marshals. They are at the field level, response behavior, which will be taken through, clubbed together as per my understanding of the functions, and then will be made as a supervisory algorithm at appropriate levels of 1, 2, 3, 4. This you can define. This is at your convenience to define how many are to be there in each of the levels, and accordingly how we are going to execute. So to know this, I need to know what are the joints in my robot, how many of them, and of which type. Okay, so that knowledge will help me to decide practically how it is going to be done. Now, this logic of how I am going to execute the control action can happen in different possible ways. The first one is a very simple limited sequence control. As the name indicates, it's a kind of a simple motion type of an application wherein just I move. Okay, nothing much of complex activity is getting done. I just move. This movement can be used for picking and placing, or slide along the weld seam, etc. For example, I have an excellent operating environment. My fit up is 100% perfect. All that I need to do is simply slide the torch along the weld length, that's all. So in that case, the operation can be executed with limited sequence control. The playback with point-to-point control is with a memory to record motion sequences in a work cycle, and I can repeat it. So again, this repeatability is with respect to how good your operating environment is. Or for example, even if, this is a very exaggerated situation, but suppose work lot of spatters and expect many spatters, there could be some kind of, repeatedly evasive action to compensate for the spatters. That can be programmed with respect to this playback mode to counter such situations whenever spatter occurs. Playback with continuous path is, you are trying to have the information in the real time. We have already spoken about, and I hope you are clear about the differentiation between point to point and continuous path. Point to point is define A, define B. Continuous path is we are trying to trace the path with respect to a real time information. So the same playback, for example, you have done a job for 300 mm, you have welded a distance of 300 mm. What happens at the distance of 150 mm need not be the same when you take the next job. But you can always record today, next big thing is going to be data. When you analyze data, you get to have patterns which can suggest some kind of a predictive control behavior for the robot to take evasive action. Okay. So that could be helpful if you are going to use playback with continuous path. The biggest or the ultimate form of control, what we expect is to replace the human being. All this robot business, whatever that we are using, sensing mechanism, etc., is to replicate the human being. What if you are there? You are the best just to take a control action for the operation to be completed. So this is possible with the what we call it as an intelligent robot. Intelligent is we are trying to match the thought process of a human being or a human welder who can weld with minimum what we can call it as a defect or minimum disturbances to the process. So there are 4 different types of control possible. The demands of, for example, an intelligent control, what I need to get for intelligent control is I need to have more inputs, more sensors, more information, and more information on real time, and more quickness with respect to my response. So I have to be responding immediately to the consideration needs. For example, let me talk of a possibility today. Welding, one of the definitions, my favorite definitions for welding is it's a series of short circuits. So this series of short circuits happen with respect to something like nanosecond or microsecond. So how we are going to deal with disturbance which is in nanoseconds and microsecond? Can your torch respond to that? Can you understand that disturbance has occurred in nanosecond, take a suitable corrective action, convey it to the torch, and torch acts on it. So this is what we mean by an intelligent control. If you are going to couple your robot with something like a CMT or any kind of low heat input welding equipment, so this is the demand is more, but you also need to understand whether your job requires such type of control. If you are looking at very control titanium based and other aerospace alloys, it is required. If you are looking at carbon steel and typical run-of-the-mill fabrication, probably your continuous path control will do the job for you. So this also needs to be evaluated with respect to your work environment. There are 4 different possible control algorithms that we can look into. So the typical control architecture I have provided here. All that I would like to tell you is this particular case. So we are in a loop wherein we have a sensor, and that goes back to the robotic arm for the control. This needs to be done at the quickest possible time period with the most appropriate control action. So that will be determined by the choice of programming languages, choice of the interface that you are going to have with respect to the setup that you are going to have. What can be incorporated is you can go to the extent of automating to the extent that you can even monitor whether your WPS, for example, is being followed faithfully. Suppose let us say my WPS says that you have to operate between 140 and 160 amps. The compliance is very, very essential and has to be recorded. And this, when it happens in an automated environment, my robot can always produce a report, says that this job was in compliance with the operating parameters of current, voltage, etc. that are specified in this WPS number so and so. And this data integrity, if it is assured, then it is an excellent report that you can generate from the robotic controller. So this is the architecture, typical architecture we can look into, the components of the robotic, what you call welding system that we typically go for. So this is what it looks in real time. I have just substituted with some of the, for example, the user interface could be operated with a Python type of programming languages. The HMI could be dictated by a Java basic kind of an operating environment, backed up with a PLC type of, field level devices which can do the job for you. So this is a typical architecture. We can go to the extent of, I prefer an Ethernet port, because with an Ethernet port, if it allows me to talk to all in the game suitably today, comfortably. So if my robot talks through Ethernet port, if my computer talks to an Ethernet port, and if all the devices, including the sensors, more or less, gives me an option to talk through Ethernet port, nothing like that. So try to maintain some kind of uniformity so that it is also easy for us to debug as and when it becomes required. Okay. So finally, I would like to highlight. See, this is your this is what is the current state. So what we can expect is already available in terms of, somebody asked about, for example, what is the what do you call the resolution of the imaging that we need to consider? What is the capturing rate of the camera that we need to consider? The answer that I can give you is, today you go to you go blindly. Okay, you go to any what you call vendor, get a camera which he is having at the lowest rung of the technology. Lowest rung, don't specify anything, just to say I want an image capturing device. He will give you a camera, okay, of any technology, CMOS or whatever technology he gives. That image resolution by technology is more than sufficient for you to use it for your well-deceived tracking. That's what I'm trying to convey. Okay. The application, today we have a saturation in terms of the algorithm, in terms of the programming language, in terms of the sensing mechanisms. The, what we can say, fit for use is being taken care of by default. You need not break your head whether this is sufficient. Okay. As far as welding is concerned, please understand, if you are going for inspection, we need to be careful. Okay. Part inspection or welding inspection is different. I'm only talking about implementation for welding. That is, the robot is going to hold a torch for welding. In that case, the technology is being sufficiently taken care of. Okay. We are at a level wherein we can just take default devices, plug them, and we can make a system. Then what is next? What is that I am looking for? What is that I have to look into is, what is this Industry 4.0? I guess this might have been talked, but still I would like to give my 2 paise kind of a definition to what it is. Today we are talking about cyber physical systems. Cyber physical system is my aspiration that my robot, for example, if it is given a task, is as good as me in terms of thinking and executing the task. So for this to happen, see, if I am there in the operating environment, I have a 360-degree sensing. The entire body is a sensing mechanism for me. I gather information through all my senses, and knowingly or unknowingly, consciously and unconsciously, my torch movement is a control action for the information that I receive through all of the sensors. So whether my instrument is capable of similar approach is the definition for cyber physical system. Real objects and virtual process are interlinked, for which I am looking at some kind of connectivity. So this is, in a way, we are entering into a so-called artificial intelligence in a factory environment, and that is what is being talked about here. So here you are, okay. I hope this is visible as a whole. You consider any robot at any place. Okay, this robot has a knowledge of what is happening in the entire sequence and when it is happening. So for example, let us say we are going to start here at the leftmost end, okay, where I have put this thing, and I have a robot here, okay. When I feed some kind of an input at this end, this robot will know at what time this is supposed to reach there, and accordingly it will be ready. Okay, so how it has to process the current inventory with respect to this input will be decided with respect to each of the input that it receives at each of these places. This is the beauty of Industry 4.0. So a robot is not going to operate in isolation, rather it is kind of a conscious of what is happening in the operating environment, and accordingly it becomes one of the most important variables for it to act on what it is having in hand right now. Okay, this environment is not, I am not showing any welding touch here, but welding is one of the activities that could be performed all along the way. So this is what we mean by connectivity in an Industry 4.0. So a robot should be able to communicate by itself with the surrounding environment, and that is what we are looking at for Industry 4.0. I already defined that whenever I talk of a robot welding is a teamwork. A sensor should have a good team with respect to its programming, colleague, with respect to its operating environment colleague, with respect to the systems in the colleague and the controller. Then it becomes a good, then only it can be successful, it can work optimal. Similarly, in an Industry 4.0, robots have to have much more confidence in trading with all these factors, what we call it as big data. For example, I will keep on recording data of my history. I would have welded 100 pieces so far. So the essence of all the 100 pieces, on an average, at each work spot, suppose I weld 300 mm on an average, each of my first mm, second mm, 3 mm, I will communicate or take a decision with respect to what has happened on an average for all the previous 100 jobs with respect to that location. So that is the essence of, how do you handle that data, and how do you communicate, how do you take the suitable control action. So your Industry 4.0 defines these robots no more as robots, but as cobots. This is collaborative robots. Collaborative robots or cobots is the future of what we call it as automation. So we will end up with what we call it as cobots in future, which is nothing but a scaled up autonomous initiative of what we call it as intelligence robots today, and what we have seen today. And it is nothing but improved, that is, whatever that you are considered for sensing, whatever that you are considered for control, will happen in real time and with respect to, or rather in response to, all the physical variables that are dictating you in the operating environment. So this is, cobots is going to be the future. I hope we see cyber physical systems and cobots in the welding domain at the earliest. So for this purpose, I have referred all these papers and sites I have given you as reference. So with this words, I thank you for the opportunity. It is time. I have exceeded by a few minutes. I thank you one and all, specifically the organizers, the organization, and Dr. Murugan for having faith in me for delivering this particular lecture. I conclude here. I would like to request you to ask your questions, and if possible, somebody can read it from the chat, or I will stop presenting and go to the chat to have a look into them. And thank you very much. I hope I was worth your time. Thank you. Shall I stop presenting and go to the questions, sir?
Yes, sir. I think there are some questions in the chat.
Okay. I will come to the chat now, and then I will. Yeah. Yeah, shall I continue or, hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shall I read it, sir?
No, I am able
You
to
can
see
read
them.
and
I am able to see them.
not-
Shall I
Okay, sir.
continue with the
Yes,
questions?
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
please, sir.
So the first question I see here, you are also seeing, I suppose, do you see a welding engineer performing in the standalone mode in this complex situation of welding automation? See, I don't see the presence of welding engineer at all. Okay, it is like I hand over, it is like subcontracting. The welding engineer has to subcontract the work to the robot. So the welding robot, what we call it as an intelligent robot, will be as good as the welding engineer to take a suitable decision on the work spot with respect to known and unknown disturbances. IoT will not be a kind of additional requirement. Even today, as on date, all the equipments that we purchase today, welding equipments, they come with the default IoT enabled options. That is, whatever that particular device or welding equipment does, I can take the data out of that device by connecting through. IoT is no more an additional requirement. It is already part of our fabrication requirement. Okay. So automation, who will be responsible? Okay. This is a very interesting question. Ideally, I would like to give it to that particular expert. For example, if it is welding automation, I would like to give it to the welding engineer. He may be a mechanical engineer, he may be a material science engineer, or in future, you will not believe me, you have to forgive me for this statement. An electronics engineer may be a much better welding engineer than a mechanical engineer. This may happen. Okay. So this is likely to happen rather. So you please hand over that responsibility of automation to a person who understands the operating system the maximum. That is my definition for whom it should be handed over to. I think any other questions are there? I am not seeing any other question or okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, because
Thank
it's
you, sir.
they have to assemble once again 2 o'clock. So
Okay.
on behalf of Department of Robotics and Automation Engineering and Center of Excellence in Welding Engineering Technology, PhD College of Technology, really I thank Dr. Venkateswaran for a wonderful lecture and informative, very useful. He has covered both sensor and controllers, really. Once again, I thank you, sir. I thank all the participants. I request all of them to assemble at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.